The morning Osei Mensah's black Range Rover turned onto Kwame Nkrumah Avenue. The street was already alive. Hawkers pushing carts, school children in pressed uniforms weaving through slow traffic, a group of old men playing drafts under a neem tree like they had nowhere better to be. Nobody looked twice at the car. In a city like Accra, a man with money was not a miracle. He was furniture. But Osei noticed her. She was sitting on an overturned plastic crate at the corner of the avenue, right where the shade from the tailor's awning barely reached. A small woman, young, maybe 26 or 27, with a wooden tray across her lap and her head bent over someone's shoe, her fingers working with a needle and thread, like she had been born doing exactly that. She had a bucket of polish at her feet, a row of brushes lined up by size against the wall, and a hand-painted sign propped against the crate that said, "Kezia's Show Repair, Fast. Clean, honest." Wait, that name Kezia, no, her name was something else. The sign was not hers. It had belonged to the woman who taught her. Her name was Abena Owusu, and the sign was the only inheritance she had. Osei did not stop that first morning. His driver, Mr. Kwame, kept the car moving through the crawl of traffic, and Osei looked back once through the rear window before his phone rang and pulled him back into the world he actually lived in. Board meetings, quarterly projections, a new hotel development in Kumasi that was 3 weeks behind schedule. He forgot about her by noon. He remembered her the next Tuesday. The Range Rover sat stuck in traffic again, this time for nearly 20 minutes, and she was there at the same corner, same crate, head bent, fingers moving. A little boy had left his school shoes with her and was sitting beside her in his socks, watching her work with the seriousness of someone overseeing a surgery. She said something to the boy without looking up, and he burst out laughing so hard he nearly fell off the wall he was sitting on. Osei watched that and felt something strange in his chest. Not attraction exactly, more like recognition, like seeing a color he had not seen in a long time. He told Mr. Kwame to pull over. Abena did not look up when the car stopped. She heard the door, heard the footsteps, kept working. When the shadow fell across her tray, she finally lifted her head, and for a moment the two of them just looked at each other. The man in the wool suit and the woman with the wax thread still looped around her finger. "I have a pair of brogues," Osei said. "The left sole is coming loose." Abena looked at his shoes. He was wearing them. The left sole was in fact coming loose. She could see the gap even from where she sat. "You can leave them tomorrow," she said. "I open at 7. I have a 7 o'clock meeting." Then 6:30, he almost smiled. "I will be here." He came at 6:40. She was already there, the crate set up, the brushes lined, a small thermos of tea balanced on the wall beside her. She took his shoes without ceremony, examined the sole the way a doctor examines an X-ray, quiet, efficient, unhurried, and told him to come back in an hour. An hour? He had no shoes. He was standing on the pavement in his socks. You want it done fast or done right? He came back in an hour. The shoes were perfect. Not just repaired, cleaned, polished, the leather conditioned. They looked better than when he had bought them. He paid her and asked how much she charged. She told him. He said that was not enough. She said it was exactly enough, and she did not make it a discussion. He went to his meeting. He thought about her 3 times before lunch. Abena Owusu had been repairing shoes on Kwame Nkrumah Avenue for 4 years. Before that, she had been a student, shoe design, of all things, at the Accra Polytechnic, until the money ran out at the end of her 2nd year, and she had to make a choice between finishing school and keeping the lights on in the room she shared with her younger brother, Kofi. She kept the lights on. She had learned the basics of shoe repair from Mama Kezia, an old woman who had that corner before her. Fixed shoes, told fortunes, sold groundnuts from the same spot for 30 years until her hands gave out. Mama Kezia spent 8 months teaching Abena everything she knew, and then one afternoon she handed her the sign and the bucket and the brushes and said, "This corner belongs to you now. Don't make it small." Abena had not made it small. She had 14 regular customers by the end of the 1st year. By year 3, she was doing custom sole work. People brought her shoes from all over the city, some of them driving in from East Legon and cantonments with Italian leather that needed careful hands. She had a system. She had a reputation. She had enough to keep the lights on, to pay Kofi's school fees, to send something home to their mother in Kumasi every month. What she did not have was enough to go back to school. The program she had left was not offered anymore. The school that had a similar program cost twice as much. She had looked into it twice and put the thought away both times, like a piece of clothing she loved but couldn't afford to wear. She was not bitter about it. That was the thing people didn't understand about Abena. She was not waiting to be rescued. She was not sitting on that crate dreaming of a different life. She was building the life she had, piece by piece, soul by soul, and she was proud of it. She just missed designing shoes, that specific ache that she kept quiet. Osei came back on Friday with another pair. Then the following week with a third. By the fourth visit, he stopped pretending there was always something wrong with his shoes. He sat on the wall next to the little boy's spot. The boy was there again, waiting for his school shoes. And he asked Abena questions. Where was she from? How long had she been on this corner? Had she always done this work? Abena answered without looking up. Yes, Kumasi originally. 4 years no. Not always. She had studied shoe design before this. That made him go quiet for a moment. You designed shoes? He said. I studied it. I didn't finish. Why not? She gave him the kind of look that meant the question was too big for a pavement conversation, and he understood and did not push. He watched her hands instead, the way she held the angle of the needle, the small precise movements that most people doing this work skipped in favor of speed. You do this like you love it, he said. I do love it. She looked up briefly. The repair is not what I love, it's the shoes. What they can be, how they hold a person. He didn't know what to say to that. He said nothing. That might have been the right answer, because she looked at him again. Really looked, the way she hadn't before, and something in her expression shifted slightly, the way a door shifts when someone tries the handle from the other side. His phone rang, he ignored it. It rang again, he answered. Said 3 words, hung up. You should go, she said. I know. He stood. Then, will you have dinner with me? She looked at him steadily, no. He nodded, not wounded, not pressing. All right. He came back Monday. It was a Monday 3 weeks later that everything changed. Not gradually, not with warning. Just the way things in a city change, all at once and before you're ready. Abena was crossing the avenue, mid-morning, a gap in traffic. The light had shifted and she thought she had time. She was carrying the wooden tray because the woman at the phone repair stand had asked to borrow her crate. She had both hands full when the motorcycle courier came through the gap she had been crossing, moving fast, cutting the corner. She went down hard on her left side. The tray went flying. Someone screamed. The courier didn't stop. When Osei's car turned onto the avenue 20 minutes later, the small crowd had mostly dispersed. Abena was sitting with her back against the tailor's wall, her left arm cradled against her chest, her face the specific gray of someone managing pain very carefully. Mr. Kwame started to drive past. Osei said, "Stop the car." He was out before Mr. Kwame had fully braked. He didn't ask her if she was okay. It was obvious she was not. He crouched down to her level and said, "I'm taking you to hospital." "I'm fine," Abena said, which was exactly what someone with a broken arm would say. Abena. It was the first time he had used her name. She looked at him. "Let me take you," he said. She didn't argue again. It was a fracture. 2 places in the radius. Nothing that required surgery but enough to put her in a cast for 6 weeks and out of work for much of that time. The doctor was kind, efficient, slightly harried. Osei handled the forms, the payment, all of it without asking and without making it a thing. Abena watched him from the bed and felt 2 opposing things at once. Gratitude and the specific discomfort of needing someone you barely know. "You don't have to stay," she said when the doctor left. "I know," he said, and stayed anyway. He called her brother Kofi. She had given him the number from memory, the same way she had given the shoe measurements, precise and without ceremony. When Kofi arrived and saw the hospital room, the cast, the man in the wool suit sitting in the corner chair, reading emails on his phone with the ease of someone completely at home, Kofi's face did a complicated thing that Abena chose not to address right then. Osei left when Kofi arrived. He left his card, not with Abena, with Kofi. He said, "If she needs anything, please call." Kofi looked at the card for a long time after he left. "Who is he?" he asked. "A customer," Abena said. Kofi looked at the card again. Osei's name was on it, and under it, in small letters, the name of the company. Mensah Development Group, Accra, Lagos, London. Some customer, Kofi said quietly. He called 3 days later, just to ask how she was. The conversation lasted 4 minutes and covered only practical things. The cast, the pain management, whether she was sleeping. But when he hung up, Abena sat with the phone in her hand for longer than 4 minutes. He called again the following Thursday, then Tuesday. Then he stopped calling on a schedule and started calling whenever, and she stopped being surprised by it, which was its own kind of surprise. He came to visit once, in the 3rd week, to the small apartment she and Kofi shared in Adabraka. He brought groundnuts and a container of soup from a restaurant she had once mentioned in passing. She hadn't remembered mentioning it, but he had. He sat in the plastic chair across from her, and they talked for 2 hours about things that had nothing to do with shoes or business. About Kumasi in the rain, about the kind of music their parents had played in the house growing up, about what it felt like to want something you couldn't see how to get. He told her, toward the end of that visit, that he had grown up in a small house in Tema, that his father had repaired cars, that the first time he wore a suit he was 24 years old, and the suit was borrowed, and he had been so terrified of the interview he forgot his own phone number when they asked him for it. She hadn't known any of that. She had looked at him and seen the Range Rover, the card, the wool. She had not looked past it. She told him that carefully, and he's most people don't. That's all right. I don't take it personally anymore. You used to? A pause. Intensely. She smiled for the first time in 3 weeks. He saw it and something in his face changed. Not dramatically, just a small brightening, like someone adjusting a light. It was Kofi who told her first. He came home from his evening class, dropped his bag, and said without preamble, "That man likes you." "He's been kind," Abena said. "Abena." Kofi's voice was patient, the way you are patient with someone you love who is being deliberately obtuse. "He drove across the city to bring you soup. It was on his way. It was not on his way. I looked it up. It was 20 minutes in the opposite direction." Abena said nothing. "I'm not saying anything bad," Kofi said carefully. "I'm just saying, he likes you, and I think..." He stopped. "What?" "I think you might like him back, and I think that scares you." She didn't answer. But she didn't argue, which for Abena was the same thing. What scared her was not Osei specifically. What scared her was the arithmetic of the thing. The Range Rover and the suit on one side of the equation, the plastic crate and the cast on the other. She had seen enough to know what happened when those two sides tried to balance. Someone always had to give something up. Someone always felt the weight of what they owed. She had promised herself a long time ago that she would never owe anyone the version of herself that fit their life better than her own. She told him this, not all of it, not in those words, but enough of it. They were sitting on the small balcony of her apartment. She was back in the chair, the cast still on, the evening coming in soft and orange over the city. And she said, "I don't want to be someone's project, Osei." He was quiet for a long moment. "Is that what you think this is?" "I think you're a man who fixes things. I think you looked at me and saw something to fix, Os." "I looked at you," he said very evenly, "and saw someone who already knew how to fix herself. That's not the same thing." She looked at him. "I'm not trying to rescue you, Abena. You had a business before I met you. You had a plan. You had a corner and a sign and a reputation and a brother whose school fees you pay every month." He paused. "I looked at you and thought, this woman is building something. I wanted to see what it was." The city was loud below them, a bus horn, someone's music from 3 floors down, Kofi washing dishes in the kitchen behind them, the sound of water and aluminum. "I'm going to need my corner back," she said finally. "When the cast comes off, I know, and I'm not going to become small for someone. Not again. I'm not asking you to." She looked at him for a long time. He looked back. He didn't fill the silence with reassurance, didn't rush to say the right thing, just let it sit there between them. Honest and unresolved, the way hard things need to sit before they can move. "I have 6 more designs," she said, "for a shoe line. I've been drawing them since I was in school. I've never shown anyone." He said nothing. He waited. "If I show you," she said, "you're not allowed to tell me they're good if they're not." "I would never do that," he said. She believed him. The designs were in a battered sketchbook she kept at the bottom of a box under her bed. 40 pages of detailed drawings, margin notes, material annotations, sole construction diagrams. She had worked on them in the evenings for years, between repair jobs and Kofi's homework and the domestic mathematics of a small household. She handed the book to Osei like she was handing him something breakable. He went through it slowly. He didn't say anything for a long time. She watched his face. He stopped at page 31. A mid-heel sandal with an interwoven strap pattern. Traditional kente weaving translated into leather. The geometry precise and deliberate and genuinely new. "Where did this come from?" he said. "My grandmother had a piece of kente from her own wedding. I used to stare at it as a kid. The geometry." She paused. "I thought it could be shoes." He looked at the drawing for a long time, then he turned the page, and the next, and the next. When he closed the book, he set it down carefully on the table between them like something that had weight. "These are not good," he said. Her stomach dropped. "They are exceptional," he said. "There is a difference." Osei Mensah did not simply write a check. That was not who he was, and more importantly, it was not what Abena would have accepted. What he did was this. He spent 3 weeks making phone calls. He found a small commercial space in Owusu, 2 rooms, good light, ground floor, that was between tenants. He called in a favor with a fabric supplier he knew from a Lagos deal. He sat down with Abena and Kofi and a legal pad, and they mapped out what a 6-month trial would look like. Production costs, pricing, the market. Kofi, who was studying accounting, ran the numbers twice. Then he looked at Osei and said, "You're not taking a share?" "No," Osei said. "Why not?" "Because it's not my company," Osei said simply. "It's hers." Kofi looked at his sister. Abena was looking at the legal pad, but the corner of her mouth was doing something she was not entirely in control of. The space was called Owusu Atelier from the first day. Small letters on a plain white sign, the same handwriting as the roadside board that had once read Kezia's show repair. Abena designed a version of the kente sandal in 4 colorways for the first collection. She hired one assistant, a quiet young woman named Afua, who had learned leatherwork from her father. They worked in the 2 rooms with a good light, and the first 12 pairs sold in 11 days through a page Kofi set up with his phone. It was not an overnight success. There were weeks that were difficult, margins that were thin, a supplier who delivered the wrong leather twice in a row. Abena learned things about running a business that nobody had taught her, and she made mistakes, and she fixed them, and she got back up. But she was designing shoes. Every day, she was doing the thing she had thought she had permanently lost. That specific ache, the one she had kept quiet for years, was finally getting air. Osei came by the atelier on a Saturday 3 months in. Not because she needed anything, just to see. She was at the work table, bent over a prototype, a new design, a low boot this time. The geometric pattern worked into the side panel instead of the strap. Afua was cutting pattern pieces in the corner. The room smelled of leather and cedar and a little of the pepper soup someone had brought for lunch. He stood in the doorway and watched for a moment before she heard him. She looked up. There was a small smudge of brown leather dye on her left cheekbone that she didn't know was there. "You should knock," she said. The door was open. He came in, looked at the prototype. "Can I see?" She handed it to him. He turned it carefully, examined the stitching, the geometry of the panel. He did not say it was good or exceptional. He said, "The seam here, is this where you want the stress point?" She came around the table and looked. She hadn't noticed it. He was right. She made a note on the margin of her sketch. "You know shoe construction," she said. "My father fixed things," he said. "I grew up watching hands." She looked at his hands. He looked at hers. They had been careful with each other for months, not distant, but careful. The way you are careful with something you know could become something large. She had needed to see the atelier first. She had needed to know who she was in it before she figured out who she was with him. She knew now. "You have dinner plans?" she said. He looked up, then stay. He stayed. Afua left at 5. The light changed slowly in the 2 rooms, going from the flat white of the afternoon to the warm gold of early evening. And they ate pepper soup from the container on the work table and talked the way they had learned to talk. Honestly, unhurried, without filling the space between sentences with things that didn't need saying. At some point, the conversation stopped, and they just sat. And it was not uncomfortable, the way silence between people who have learned each other is never uncomfortable. "I want to say something," Abena said eventually. "All right. When I was on that crate, every day, every morning, I wasn't unhappy." She chose her words carefully. "I want you to know that I wasn't waiting to be found. I had built something I was proud of." "I know," Osei said. "But there is a difference," she said, "between being proud of where you are and being willing to go further." She looked at him. "You didn't give me a different life. You gave me more of the life I already wanted." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "You gave me something too." "What?" He thought about it, really thought, the way he did everything. "I had been so careful for so long," he said, "about what I showed people, about what I let matter." He paused. "You were sitting there on that crate being exactly who you were, not performing anything for anyone, not making yourself smaller or larger than you were. I had forgotten what that looked like." She looked at him for a long moment. "You remember now?" He smiled. It was a full smile, the kind that didn't happen often on his face, and was all the better for it. "I remember now," he said. Outside on Kwame Nkrumah Avenue, the evening traffic was moving again. The slow, honking, living crawl of a city that does not stop for anyone, not for grief or joy, or the kind of quiet turning that changes two people's lives forever. But inside the two rooms with the good light, something had settled into place, the way a well-made shoe settles when someone finally wears it, fitting not because it was forced into shape, but because it was made, from the beginning, to hold.